So thank you for attending the webinar to learn how to conduct the point-in-time survey in HMIS. I'm going to go over a few details before I turn this over to Ben Mahoney, who will then walk you through the process. This is the first year our COC is using HMIS to generate point-in-time data, and we really appreciate not only your willingness to join us on this new path, but also your patience. We will obtain the point-in-time data for all agencies who use HMIS and who have an emergency shelter or a transitional housing project. So those with rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects are not part of the point-in-time count. So again, it's just emergency shelter and transitional housing if the agency is already using HMIS. Agencies must conduct a point-in-time survey for each client who is residing in the shelter, or I should say each head of household if that person has a family with them. And this is going to start at midnight on Thursday, January 26th. So it's all of the clients who spend the night on Thursday, January 26th. If a client exits at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, January 25th, that client is not going to be counted for the point in time at your shelter. It's also extremely important that the client is exited in HMIS before midnight on the 26th. So this is where all of the time that we've been talking about real-time data entry and making sure all of your clients are entered and exited, this is really, really important. All of the clients who exit your shelter before the 26th actually need to be exited in HMIS as well. You will also notice in your little box where you can get ask questions and have handouts, there is a quick guide for three-step guidance on how to enter the point-in-time information into HMIS. I know we really try to reduce printing, but I think this will be helpful to have near your data entry computers as we get started on this. We're leaving everyone in mute mode right now in order to reduce background noise. So if you do have a question, please use the question box and we will definitely get to those. Don't be shy. If you have that question, someone else probably has that question as well. And again, just a reminder, this is our first year doing this. So we're all going to learn together. And so please don't be shy and ask plenty of questions. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our HMIS guru, Ben Mahoney. Ben, it's all yours.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone as well here for showing up. And what we're going to do is look at a new add-on that our HMIS team has built and is going to release to the live site. Right now, you might notice we're in the training site. So we're going to log in here and kind of go through the steps that you'll need to take to access the PIT survey once it's available when PIT comes around. So you go to your login site and log in just like you normally do. It's going to ask you for your work group and organization, again, just like normal, and it's going to launch just like normal. You're probably all very familiar with this. And it's going to bring you in on the home workspace. You're going to see all of your standard dashboards. You want to go to the top at the carousel button. Go ahead and click there. And you want to hop over to the client's workspace. One little tip here is that you can just click directly to the magnifying glass if you want to find an existing client. And you're going to go to your search bars and type in the client you're looking for. In this case, we're going to be working with Albus Dumbledore. We can search for them and they'll pop right up. If you're working with a new client, somebody who isn't already in the in the HMIS, what you'll need to do is go to the top left and do an intake, like you'd be doing a normal intake for a normal new client. And then you want to add them, add a new client, add them and their family before you do the PIT survey. So they do need to be enrolled and added into the system, both the head of household and the family. You'll notice for Albus here at the very top, and you look at his family button, he does have one family member, Brian Dumbledore. There's a dependent child, and I added that in here just to kind of demonstrate some of the things that the PIT survey will do when you're working with someone with a family record. To find the PIT survey, you want to go to the menu at the left. You want to go past the housing if you have that available, past case management, all the way to the bottom where it says PIT survey in blue. Click PIT survey and it's going to open up the menu option for PIT survey. It's a blue flag assessment. It's going to open up a screen here. It's like a search screen. It's going to list all of the existing surveys. Right now there aren't any surveys because we haven't made one for Albus yet. So what we'll want to do is click New Survey at the top right. This yellow button with a green plus sign. That's going to take us to our new PIT survey form. Now the thing about all this data, and like I said, this is something we developed ourselves. So if you ever dislike it and you want to talk with the developer, that's Victoria and I. We worked on this ourselves. So we designed this to be completely separate from any of the other data. So if you just added a new client or you're working with a client that already exists, like Albus here, and you see birth date is blank and you think, why do I have to retype that? Well, we kept it separate. Some of this PIT survey data looks at data in different ways than the HMIS client track will look at it. So there might be a little bit of duplicate entry. If you forget something like birth date for your client, you'll have it listed right at the top there. Albus Dumbledore was born on June 25th, 1881. And that's right up there in your entity toolbar. So we'll just need you to retype that there. The next question would be about age groups. Again, this is another way that PIT looks at client data a little bit differently from client track here. So you just want to make your selection here. Albus is 65 and older, so we'll go and select that one. And basically, none of these data elements are required. It's just what the client volunteered to provide information-wise. Hopefully there's a lot of information, but you just work top to bottom depending on what data you have. So where are you sleeping tonight? Albus Dumbledore is in a safe haven program just because that's what I have him set up here in the training database. When you look at a question like, how long has this current episode of homelessness lasted? You have years, months, dates, and it's really how the client self-identified. So if they said they've been homeless for 1 year, 2 months, 13 days, that's very specific, but that's great. We're glad to have that much data. If all we have is something like 2 months, that's fine as well. And let's just fill it out as best as you can. Which of the following best describes your current situation of homelessness? We'll do 2 to 3 times in the past 3 years. Have you been homeless another time in the past 12 months? Well, yes, because that would make sense with the question just before it. This next section is actually really cool. If you haven't gotten to add an address in the database yet, you'll be able to type in a city. What it'll do is look at all cities throughout the United States and Canada and kind of smart guess where you're at. So Austin is coming up there at the bottom, but we could even type in something like Lubbock, Texas, and you're going to get all of the different zip code options there. It's not limited just to Texas. You could do New York, if that happens to be the case, whatever it may be. For Albus, we'll just go ahead and put Austin, because that's what we're based out of. We'll go to Austin, Texas, 78704. Now, what age did you first face homelessness? We'll say Albus faced it when he was 65. And he's with family. We know that because we have a family member added in. We know that because they self-identified that way, but they could very well be on their own. We have a click all that apply multiple select option here. Please share all the reasons that contributed to why you're experiencing homelessness. Again, whatever the client self-identified here, so we'll just mark a couple. You can click as many as you need or as few as you need. One or all with that green check box, hopefully not all. We'll just mark a couple there. Gender identity, you may notice these break down a little bit differently from client track. Again, another one of those reasons why we keep this data separate. We'll go ahead and mark male. Sexual orientation, another way it's broken down differently. We'll mark gay, lesbian, bisexual. Race, again, in client track, that's usually a multiple select option. Here we only have one select. So if it is two or more, there is that option available, whatever the case may be. So we can just go through here. Are you able to work? We'll put yes. Now you're going to see some logic built into the form here. Don't worry, things will change and that's fine. When you look at what is your job status, the next couple questions are one of those date ranges, years, months, days, but it's for unemployed. So if we select unemployed, those questions stay available and then we'll be able to answer them as we need. If we were to change to temporary job, the unemployment time frame goes away. So you don't need to worry about that because it's only asking about if you're unemployed. It'll come and go as you need to select it. Now we get to the questions about the U.S. Navy and National Guard. They're separated here. Again, we're going to see some logic built into the form. If you select yes for being in the U.S. Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, you're going to lose the question about the National Guard. If you select no, you'll be able to still answer the question about the National Guard. If you select no there, you'll lose all the questions about the tours that you may have served in, number of years of service, etc. So this is some of that smart logic built in.
Hey Ben, it's Lindsay. Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so if you are wondering why we're asking whether or not a person has served in one of those major branches and then asking whether or not they've served in the National Guard, HUD and the VA a few years ago figured out that a lot of folks, if they had served in the National Guard or had been called up as a reserve, if people asked them whether or not they had served in the military, they were saying no. So they are asking us to go ahead and word this differently, ask it again, just in case. And you're probably not going to see a lot of people who say, no, I wasn't in the military, but yes, I did serve in the National Guard. You're not going to see a lot of those people, but I can tell you from last year, we did have a couple of folks throughout the entire balance of state answer that way. So please be sure and not skip over that. Okay, and that's all I have. Ben, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Lindsay. That's great additional information there. So again, smart logic here. Depending on what the person responded, fill it out as needed. We'll go ahead and mark no just to kind of limit our screen space here. When we keep moving down, there's a question of which of the following best describes your family or household. When you look in there, you have the option of single adult, single individual adult, or a couple with children, or without children, excuse me. So that's looking at those people who are individuals. They don't have any children. Even if there's two people, like spouses, who have no kids, that would be that first option there. But Albus does have a dependent child. So we're probably going to mark, I'm an adult parent in a household with children, because he's not a parenting minor, he's not a parent who is under 18, he's not a parenting youth, and he's not an accompanied minor or youth. So we'll mark that one there. That could be any sort of family, two spouses, three kids, that would still be adult parent in a household with children. As we keep going, any of the health conditions, as reported by the client, that may be there. In their case, we'll mark physical disability because Albus gets his hand injured. in the stories. Have you ever experienced physical or sexual violence while homeless? Go ahead and mark no. Are you pregnant or expecting a parent? In Albus's case, probably not. And finally, which of the following services do you need? Whatever the client reports needing, we can mark there. It's multiple select. You can select all, you can select none, or at least one or two. We'll do basic needs and job training and placement. Now, one thing to notice is that now that we're getting to the bottom of the survey here, you're going to see some additional rows for the family members. First thing you'll notice is that the head of household, Albus, all of his options here are grayed out and they are unable to be worked with. The reason for that is you don't have to. You already answered all of this information. Why would you, go back and, do more duplicate entry? There's no reason for that. Whereas if you look at Brian here, those will all come out as select. You'll see Brian, dependent child, and we have these age groups. So we know Brian is 17 and under. We know he's a male. Go ahead and mark some of the default options here. Or just, whatever the case may be. Veterans, adults only, you don't really need to worry about that for a child. What you do need to worry about though, is this last option, the disabilities. So what you'll do here is make sure you scroll all the way to the right, because if your screen is small and you want to scroll over and just double check and mark any physical disability as needed. This is something that could trip people up because it is something you got to scroll to the right to see all of. The other thing to keep in mind here is that your relationship to head of household is directly related to the family record for this client. So if you were to change dependent child here to son or whatever the case may be, that will be reflected in the overall family record of the client. So, two things to keep in mind. The relationship to head of household is really important. Scrolling to the right is really important. And once you have everything filled out, go ahead and click Save at the bottom right here. And it's going to think about it. And it's going to send you back to the search form here and list out existing surveys. Now, a couple of things you may be noticing. One, there are duplicate rows. Don't worry about that. Yesterday when I was going through this and showing it to Lindsay, it showed 3 duplicate rows. This really shouldn't be happening. I think this is a glitch with the training site. However, if you do encounter it, notice that the dates are the same. Date and time is the exact same. It really shouldn't be doing this, but you did nothing wrong. Just go ahead and ignore the duplicate rows there. Each client should only have one PIT survey, and one way you can tell that is by looking at the date. So if you have one PIT survey that has a date of 1/10/2017 at 1:18 p.m. and then there's another one at 1:20 p.m. Okay, so we know that there's 2 of them, 2 separate surveys. We only really need one, and this is still what we're seeing here. If you need to edit anything, if you want to go back and change some of those answers, you have the edit button right there to the left. Go ahead and click there, and it's going to send you right back into the survey, and all of that information will come right back up. Yep, there it is. And you'll be able to save or cancel at the bottom right. If you want to change anything, need to adjust, save. You'll notice that there isn't a delete option. If you do accidentally create multiple PIT surveys for one client, go ahead and shoot us an email, and we'll be able to delete the one that needs to be deleted. We do have those options on the back end there. If you are trying to create a PIT survey on a record that is not the head of household, like we're on Albus's record, he is self, he is the head of household. If we go to Brian Dumbledore, and we look at his PIT survey, you'll see that there's nothing listed here. Even though we did a PIT survey for Albus, that will not show up on anyone but the head of household. And if you look to the right, there is no new survey button. I anticipate this to be a issue. If you guys send a bunch of emails, just remember you must be on the head of household, put it on a sticky note, put it next to the computer, must be under the head of household, or you won't even get the option of creating the PIT survey. We did this by design, again, just because when we report this information out later, it really all needs to be on the head of household's record for it to make sense on the back end.
Hey Ben, it's Lindsay again. Can we go back
Yeah,
to the point in time survey and scroll to the bottom to look at the additional family members?
sure. So I just clicked the edit button to go back to the same survey and scrolled all the way down, and you'll see the listed family members here.
Okay, so we had a question. Aside from reflecting the family record, does choosing son or dependent child make a difference in the reporting?
No, no. Choosing the relation to head of household should really just be what's reflected in HMIS. So if you had a family that came in already, like let's say, a couple days ago, and they're still in during the PIT count time, when you go to that head of household record, it's going to pull that whole family, how they were first put in HMIS and all of those relationships. It really just needs to reflect what is true. There's not one value that's weighted more than the other, except in the self, in the head of household, and every family should only have one self. So it's one good way to keep track of any sort of data quality potential issues. If you're going through and a family has multiple selves, that's a problem, not just in PIT, but in HMIS as well. And so we'll be able to take a look at that and try to get things sorted out.
Thanks, Ben.
Sure. On that note, I mean, if you have any issues, the best way to get in touch with us is to email hmis@thn.org, especially if you need something removed or deleted. Shoot us an email with both the client ID, and let's say there's a PIT survey you need deleted. We need the client ID and the date and time of that this particular survey, and we'll be able to remove that. The reason I suggest the email address is because it's monitored by both Victoria and I. And Victoria and I both worked on this project. She's here in the webinar. I mean, she's brilliant, and so that email address is going to be monitored just by more people. If you happen to have one of our personal email addresses, I still strongly urge giving us a call or emailing there, as more people will be able to respond to that more quickly.
Okay.
And that kind of does it. Do we have more questions?
I don't see any other questions coming in right now. I know a lot of people were a little nervous about how this was going to work, but my thanks to Ben and Victoria for doing a great job setting this up, making it very user-friendly, and yeah, I know they knock it out of the park all the time for you all, so they did it for me too. And so thanks to Ben and Victoria. You all, if you have any other questions, please go ahead and throw them into the question box and we'll get to them. Let's see, we do have one more that just came in. Since I have a transitional housing project, most of my clients will be here on January 26th. When can I begin completing these surveys? Are they available now? They're not available now. We aren't going to make them available until midnight on the 26th. So to answer that question, if you know that those clients are going to be spending the night, and because it's transitional, there's a high likelihood that they will be spending the night, you can start at 1 minute after midnight on the 26th. And someone is asking about the mobile app for point in time. So if you are doing an unsheltered count, or if you know of an agency, or maybe you're at an agency who doesn't use HMIS, then yes, you can use the mobile app. Ben, do you mind throwing up our website on your screen so everyone can see our website really quick? So you'll see the bar up at the top, and if you just want to go over to Balance of State, COC, and go down to COC Resources, and click on that, and then you will see 2017 PIT materials. If you go ahead and click on that, you are going to have all of the point-in-time information that you need. There are right there the point-in-time mobile app instructions, and that's going to tell you everything you need to know if you're doing an unsheltered count or if your agency doesn't use HMIS. I assume everyone here is using HMIS since this is a pretty specific webinar. Let's see. The next question is, where can we locate a housing inventory worksheet? Your housing inventory worksheets are going to be sent to you. Those are going to be mailed out this week. And what that is, as we've gone over in previous webinars, in addition to the point in time count, we also have to conduct a housing inventory count. And what the housing inventory does is really get more information about your particular shelter, whether it's emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. So we ask questions about how many units you have. We ask questions about how many total beds you have. We ask you to break that down between households without children and households with children. Now, we also understand that not everybody says, okay, we only have 10 beds available for households with children, because we know if those are all taken and you have a single individual come in needing shelter that night, obviously you're going to offer that bed. So we're not so concerned with you breaking those down exactly, and we know you don't have exact bed distinctions between households with children and households without. But if you do serve those two different family types, then we want you to break them up as best as you can. We also ask about funding sources on the housing inventory count. So I know it's a lot, and there are two things going on the same night, but we need the point in time done in HMIS, and then the housing inventory is going to be sent to you again. I'm sending those out this week. We're trying something new this year, and so we just want you to fill out this paper worksheet about your project. So maybe you have 2 transitional housing projects. We want you to fill out 1 for each, and we're going to provide you 1 for each, and then mail that back to us. And so they'll be mailed out this week, and fill it out for the night of the 26th, because we then ask you, how many people did you have spending the night here with you, and we just want to make sure that it matches up with what you've put into HMIS. So they'll be sent out this week. Those are really great questions. Thanks. Any more questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to assume that I don't see any more questions coming in, that everyone is able to figure this out. It makes sense, and we're good to go. If you do have any questions regarding entering your point in time count in HMIS, please go ahead and email the help desk. Ben and Victoria, like Ben said, both monitor that email address, and that's a really good way to get a question answered as soon as possible. So with that, Ben, I guess we'll go ahead and wait a minute. I see one more question coming in. Okay, this person has emailed me a question, so let me jump over to my email really quick and we'll get that. Okay, there's a question about doubled up clients. So let me just reiterate again, this particular webinar is really concerning clients who are staying in your emergency shelter or your transitional shelter and using HMIS. So if you have an emergency shelter that isn't using HMIS, this webinar probably didn't make a lot of sense to you, and that's okay because it shouldn't. But if you are doing an unsheltered count and you come across an individual who is staying with their friends, unfortunately, for point-in-time purposes, that person is not going to be counted as homeless. So the only people who are counted as homeless for point-in-time purposes are those individuals and families residing in emergency shelter, and this includes DV shelters, transitional housing, safe havens, places not meant for habitation, so a tent, a bus stop, literally sleeping on the street, park benches, and those individuals or families staying in a motel or a hotel that has been paid with by a voucher. So I know we have a lot of people who are staying in hotels and they're paying out of their own pocket. Again, unfortunately, those people are not considered homeless for point-in-time standards. So those are the people that you're going to be counting. Again, just to throw this back out there, anyone who is doubled up is not going to be counted as homeless for the point in time. So there's one more question, or two more questions. Are we sending surveys and housing inventories to agencies not on HMIS? We are. We're definitely doing that. We obviously aren't able to determine how many clients that these agencies will have on that night, so we just sent a handful of surveys. So obviously if there are more clients, go ahead and just make copies of the survey. But we are sending a handful to get agencies started with. The deadline for the survey, so everything needs to be entered in before the clock ticks over to Friday. I know that's a lot. This is really a team effort, and we want all of the case managers working together as well as administration at all of the shelters. It's one night that we're asking you to do this, so if we could just have all hands on deck, that would be fantastic, and it really will help with the turnaround in getting your numbers back to you. Okay, there's one more question. These are great. These are really, really good questions. Thank you all. If we are a non-HMIS participating agency, are we required to also collect surveys outside the emergency shelter? That would be a question for your point-in-time coordinator. So that person should have coordinated a point-in-time count, but you're really responsible for your shelter. So if you're not using HMIS, you're definitely responsible for getting the surveys from your clients in your shelter. Now, whether or not you're going to move beyond that and count the unsheltered, that is something that should have already been worked out with your point-in-time coordinator. And my answer would be yes. It is extremely important to count the unsheltered. That's really, really what we want. We really want to get a grip on how many people are literally homeless, unsheltered, living in places not meant for habitation. We really want to get those numbers. So that's a good question, and hopefully I answered that well. We do have one more question. Our transitional housing program does not require that our tenants be homeless prior to entering our housing program. Do we still complete this point in time survey for our tenants? Yes. Yes, if they are staying in your transitional housing program, then they are considered to be homeless. Okay. There might be somebody who is typing a question, but I'm not seeing anything else come in. So, Ben, do you mind throwing up your contact information again?
Not at all.
Okay, here it is. Hopefully everyone already has this email as well as the phone number to get in touch with Ben and Victoria. If you have any HMIS point in time related questions, go ahead and email that to the help desk. If you have general point in time questions, go ahead and send that to me. Everyone here has my email address, and so actually, Ben, if you want to type that up there, that'd be helpful too.
Your email address?
That's my email address.
Cool.
Okay. Well, again, everyone, thank you so much for attending. It's been great. We had a great turnout. Hopefully this helps, and I hope everyone is very excited about entering information in through HMIS. It's going to be easy and it's going to be quick, and we're very excited about it. So thank you all so much. Ben and I are going to stick around for just a few more minutes, but feel free to log out. Have a good afternoon. Bye.